Surviving a horror movie is no mean feat. Just escaping a masked maniac, a zombie apocalypse, a nasty beastie, or having your soul released from a possession is as cathartic for the viewer as it is for the survivor in question. Given that amount of stress, however, perhaps it's no wonder we never saw some of these badasses ever again. I'm Tilly from What Culture Horror, and these are 10 horror movie survivors who vanished from sequels. Number 10. Joel Jones, Scream 2. Dwayne Martin's Joel Jones is a smart man. Unlike 99% of horror movie characters, Joel sees what's going down in Scream 2 and simply opts to get as far away as possible from the piling bodies of this sequel. When we're reintroduced to Gale Weathers in this Scream follow-up, Joel is shown to be her new cameraman, having taken over that gig from namesake Kenny Jones, a character who was brutally offed in Wes Craven's iconic 1996 picture. For Joel, reading Gale's The Woodsboro Murders book and realising the fate of Weathers' last cameraman has him already weighing up his options, and it's the murder of Randy Meeks that fully pushes Joel towards the exit door. Telling Gale how she needs her head examined, Joel makes the wise call to leave Scream 2's central protagonists to it, for he has zero intentions of becoming one of Ghostface's victims. Having been absent for the majority of the second half of the movie, Joel would rock up during the final minutes to pick up his spot as Gale's cameraman once more, but still, the character wasn't seen or heard from in either Scream 3 or Scream 4. Here's hoping that Scream 5 will see the return of such a brilliant character. Number 9. Tori Redding, Leprechaun. Bar an uncredited role as an extra in Mac and Me, 1993's Leprechaun was Jennifer Aniston's official acting debut. The first film in a franchise that currently stands at 8 pictures. Writer-director Mark Jones' 93 offering positioned Aniston's Tori Redding in the crosshairs of Lubdan the Leprechaun, played by Warwick Davis. Here, Tori and her father JD are renting a farmhouse where Lubdan's been trapped in a crate for a decade. I just want to let you know now, dear viewer, that I did indeed subject myself to every single Leprechaun movie to try and figure out how to pronounce the little f***er's name properly. The things I do for you. Of course, once our titular creature escapes, he soon embarks on a mission to terrorise and torment the Reddings. By the time all is said and done, Tori and some pals have banished the Leprechaun with a 4-leaf clover attack that ends with him falling down a well, which is then torched. Considering that there have been 7 movies since that first Leprechaun effort, one would imagine the main survivor of the first film of such a hefty franchise would have returned at some point. One also has to think, given the cruel nature of Lubdan and his history for holding a grudge, he would have purposefully targeted Tori for what she'd done to him in that 1993 film. She was mentioned in the 2018 reboot of the series, although it's revealed she died of cancer. Of course, Aniston would also be on the air as Rachel in Friends just 1 year after Leprechaun was released. Better that than Leprechaun 4, that is for certain. Number 8. Neil Gordon, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. The Elm Street franchise is one that has had several survivors over the years, but it's also a franchise that has had a habit of bringing those survivors back and then having them brutally killed off by Freddy Krueger. To highlight this, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors boldly killed off the original film's all-conquering Nancy Thompson. One Dream Warriors survivor who wasn't brought back just to be killed off was Craig Wasson's Dr. Neil Gordon. In fact, Gordon wasn't brought back at all. Wasson's character is the psychiatrist designated to deal with the last of the Elm Street children in Western Hills Hospital. It's only midway through Dream Warriors' mind that the importance of these teenagers is revealed, with Nancy, who is working as an intern under Dr. Gordon, breaking this news to our team of survivors. For Gordon, he merely thinks that these troubled youngsters are dealing with a shared delusion when they proclaim how a melty-faced, blade-fingered fella is tormenting their dreams. Either way, Doc Gordon manages to evade Freddy Krueger's clutches, only to never be seen again. Number 7. KRISTEN MCKAY, The Strangers. We may have all initially thought that she was totally dead, yet KRISTEN MCKAY actually managed to somehow survive the traumatic events of Brian Bettino's The Strangers. In this 2008 picture, Kristen, played by Liv Tyler, and her beau, James, played by Scott Speedman, find themselves terrorised by the mysterious man in the mask, Pin-Up Girl, and Dollface. A genuinely random attack, this couple are merely targeted because they were home. Nothing more, nothing less. Both of our central protagonists here are massively put through the ringer, with them being tied up and stabbed over and over again. By the time The Strangers hits its bleak final few minutes, James is dead, and we're led to believe that Kristen is likewise deceased, as our trio of masked killers drive off into the sunset. It's only when 2 young boys spreading the word about religion stumble upon these dead bodies that we realise Kristen is alive as her lifeless body suddenly shrieks in terror. Unfortunately, in the 10 years it took to get The Strangers Prey at Night to cinemas, the return of KRISTEN MCKAY was ultimately axed. When a sequel was first being planned though, this character was indeed due to return, only to be killed in the follow-up's opening, so it's probably for the best that she didn't return then. Number 6. Michael Emerson, The Lost Boys. For those blissfully unaware, there are actually 2 sequels to Joel Schumacher's 1987 classic, The Lost Boys. One of the main reasons why some of you may not have heard of these follow-ups is that the first of them, The Lost Boys: The Tribe, didn't arrive until 21 years after its predecessor. After that, The Lost Boys: The Thirst would arrive in 2010, with both sequels going straight to DVD. While they may have flown under the radar for some of us, these Lost Boys sequels did actually bring back 3 of our main cast in one way or another. For The Tribe, that had Corey Feldman's Edgar Frog taking centre stage, with a final shot appearance from Corey Haim's Sam Emerson. By the time of The Thirst, Edgar was joined by his brother Alan. The only person missing from the 2 sets of brothers who spearheaded The Lost Boys though was Jason Patric's Michael Emerson, the older brother of Sam who turned into a half-vampire in that first film. Not only does Michael not appear in The Lost Boys: The Tribe or Lost Boys: The Thirst, but he's not even mentioned, despite the main protagonists of The Tribe being his cousins! Maybe he was just too busy eating maggots or something. Number 5. Ginny Field, Friday the 13th Part 2. To many Friday the 13th fans, Amy Steele's Ginny Field is the best protagonist in the entire franchise. Given how this franchise encompasses 10 movies, a crossover with A Nightmare on Elm Street and a reboot, it certainly says something to see Ginny forever held on such a pedestal by horror hounds. When it comes to the final girl's stakes, Ginny's predecessor Alice made an appearance in Friday the 13th Part 2 after surviving the original film. Granted, Alice had a pickaxe stuck through her head in the opening moments of that sequel, but still, at least she got to turn up in 2 movies. Later, in the F-13 franchise, Tommy Jarvis famously became a recurring protagonist, appearing in 3 movies. But for Ginny, she wasn't afforded the opportunity to go face-to-face with Jason Voorhees after her one-and-done outing, despite toppling Voorhees and surviving Friday the 13th Part 2. With Ginny last seen erratically screaming as the police took her away at the end of F-13P2, there were so many possibilities of which direction to take the character in future features. But alas, it simply wasn't to be. Number 4. John Tate, Halloween H2O. As it stands, the current canon of the series only includes John Carpenter's Halloween, David Gordon Green's 2018 Halloween, and the 2 upcoming sequels. Prior to that, the franchise featured the first 2 Halloween pictures, then Halloween H2O, then Halloween Resurrection. For Josh Hartnett's John Tate, his sole appearance in this most beloved of horror series came in H2O, with him as the son of Laurie Strode. Unfortunately for John, it's only during this movie that he realises who his mother really is, her having changed her identity to Kerry Tate years prior. To this day, Halloween H2O holds up as one of the better outings in the franchise, and fans were eager to see more from John Tate/Strode once Resurrection was first announced. Sadly, there would be no further appearances for Hartnett's character, despite how there was an extremely natural way to bring John back in Resurrection. Of course, Halloween Resurrection would shockingly kill off Laurie Strode during its opening sequence. Surely if there was a way to have John appear in a film, it was there, dealing with his mother's death and possibly going after the Shape himself. Instead, John Tate no longer exists in the current Halloween timeline. Number 3. Helen Lyle, Candyman. Granted, Virginia Madsen's Helen Lyle didn't technically survive 1992's Candyman, but she did become something more than a mere mortal by the time Bernard Rose's movie rolled to a close. Having become obsessed with the legend of the Candyman, Helen ends up in over her head, eventually offering her own life to Tony Todd's legendary Spectre with a B fanbase and being burned alive in order to save a baby boy. While that doesn't particularly make Helen a survivor of this picture per se, what it did do is transform her into an entity all of her own, as shown by her confronting her cheating husband Trevor in Candyman's final seconds after he unknowingly summoned her. By showing Helen to now be an almost otherworldly presence similar to the Candyman, that means that there was plentiful scope to utilise the character in the sequels Candyman Farewell to the Flesh and Candyman Day of the Dead. Instead, neither of these follow-ups opted to bring Helen back, despite both films being direct continuations of the events seen in that first Candyman offering. I haven't got round to seeing the 2021 Candyman, so if she does make an appearance there, keep it to yourselves, would you? Number 2. Mark Kincaid, Scream 3. For the Scream franchise, it's a rule of thumb, well, barring the aforementioned Joel of Scream 2, that any surviving characters return for the next entry in the series. To date, Sidney Prescott, Gale Weathers and Dewey Riley have returned for all 4, soon to be 5, Scream pictures, while Scream survivor Randy also turned up in Scream 2, Cotton Weary made it through to Scream 3, and Marley Shelton is reprising her Scream 4 role of Judy Hicks for the upcoming next installment in the franchise. When someone survives a Scream film, it's rare that they don't make a follow-up appearance, even if said appearance is merely to be killed off. For Patrick Dempsey's Detective Mark Kincaid, the closing moments of Scream 3 suggested he'd be a shoo-in return should another Scream movie happen. By the time Scream 4 slashed its way to the silver screen in 2011 though, Kincaid was nowhere to be seen. The last we saw of him, he was settling down on Sydney's sofa to watch a movie and eat some popcorn with Sid, Gail and Dewey. Dempsey's character was now more than just a cop. He was a friend or even potential love interest for Sydney. As such, the complete lack of any mention of him in Scream 4 just felt odd. Number 1. Jessie, Wrong Turn. When casual horror fans think of the Wrong Turn franchise and its victims, the first person who comes to mind is Eliza Dushku's Jessie. The thing is, Dushku's character, despite surviving the first Wrong Turn offering, only ever appeared in that first entry of the 7-movie series. In Rob Schmidt's 2003 picture, audiences were introduced to the inbred, flesh-devouring, body-splitting, twisted ways of One Eye, Sawtooth and Three Fingers. And all this came about after a group of 6 were forced to take a wrong turn. From there, we see the film's 3 demented villains stalk this group and take them out one by one. While 4 of these heroes of the hour would be slaughtered, Jessie was joined by Desmond Harrington's Chris Flynn in managing to make it out of this 2003 effort in one piece. And much like Jessie, Chris was likewise never featured or even referenced in the subsequent movies. In a fun piece of trivia, Eliza Dushku was at one point intended to play herself in the opening moments of Wrong Turn 2 Dead End, where she would have been brutally killed. Instead, audiences got American Idol finalist Kimberly Ann Caldwell Harvey in that opening scene spot. And that's our list. What other horror movie survivors simply disappeared and didn't return for the sequel? Let us know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and swing on by our channel again if you want to get your horror fix. I've been Tilly, and this has been What Culture Horror. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you and your loved ones are doing safe and well. Until next time.